Hi friends, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be talking about childhood sexual abuse and my story. So please be aware that this is going to be very graphic content and very disturbing content. So if you're around kids, please don't listen to this around them. So I'll just tell my story from the beginning. My mom and dad met in Mexico. She was in her 20s. She had her career going. She was independent. She had it already made. Like, she had a 2-story house and a cool Volkswagen Rabbit, very successful, making good money. And she met my dad, and he was traveling from the US down in Mexico. They met, got married, and had me. My dad would take care of me while my mom went back to work. And so he ended up leaving, like abandoning us when I was 3 years old. He left with another woman and went out of the country. I think he either went to Europe or back to the US, I'm not really sure, with his new lady. And my mom was pregnant with my sister. My mom was due in 2 weeks. And he left. Like, she was ready to have my sister, and I was 3 years old. So he left, and my mom had my sister. So then, moving forward, we moved to the US after my sister was born, and we came to California, and we started over. When I was 10 years old, my dad came back into our lives. And my sister met him for the first time. She was about 7 years old. And he took us to Knott's Berry Farm. And I remember asking him, "Why did you leave?" And he's like, "Oh, that's something I'll tell you when you're older." We would just see him for Christmas or Thanksgiving or summertime. We would go up to see him and my grandma and my family that lived in Napa. Or he would come down to SoCal and hang out with us. Like, he would stay at a hotel and, come pick us up, and we would do things. When I was 18, 19, and 20 years old, I went to Mexico by myself with him because he would buy land. And he would do, like, really inappropriate things where I would be really scared to be around him. Fast forward to when I'm 20 years old, it was just my dad and I are driving to the mountains. So he was driving, I was in the passenger seat, and he took out a list, and the list was of what he did to me chronologically. So he went down the list, and he said, "When you were a baby and your mom would be at work, I would put my penis in your mouth. And, well, you know how babies like to suck on things, like the bottle." And I asked him, "Why?" And he said, "I don't know." And so then I asked, "Would you ejaculate into my mouth when I was a baby and I would eat it?" And he said yes. So then he kept going chronologically. So that's when I was a baby, like an infant. So then when I was 3 years old, he said that I would take a shower with him and he would be jacking off in the shower, and that I would do it for him. When he would ejaculate, I thought it was pee. He thought it was funny. So the list just went on. I asked him, "Why are you telling me this?" And he said, "Because it's easier to go to the source than to pay $200 or $300 an hour to see a therapist." And so he just kept going on with his list, and I asked him if he was sexually abused by anyone, and he said no. He said he took a really bad fall on his bike when he was 19. He would ride like those long distance type bikes, and he fell really hard and hit his brain, but he said he was never abused. So it didn't really make sense to me. So then he continued. He's like, yeah, when I would talk to you on the phone when I was a kid or junior high, that he would be on the phone with me and like just talking about anything, and he would be jacking off while we're talking on the phone about school or whatever. And then he made this cassette tape with all these songs that he wrote. He said the song Taboo was about me. And I never really listened to the tape. I listened to some of it, but not all of it, because I just didn't like it. I didn't want to hear it. I always was uncomfortable around my dad. My sister was the one who wanted a dad. She was the one who cried for a dad, who wanted a daddy-daughter moment. I never really cared for him. I wasn't really excited that he was back. I wasn't yearning for a dad the way my sister was. And I asked him, how do you feel about my sister? And he's like, well, I see her as a daughter, but I'm in love with you. And I was like, but we're the same blood. You're literally my dad. And then he said, yeah, I know. So now he went down his list chronologically, telling me everything he's ever wanted me to wear and all the things he's wanted to do to me and all the things he did do to me. And so then he said, well, there's one last thing. And I was like, okay, well, just tell me. You already told me all these incredibly horrible things. And he said, how much would you charge me if we were to go to a hotel right now for 3 or 4 hours and have sex? And I said, no way. Like, that's disgusting. You're my dad. I'm not going to have sex with you. He took me home, and then he kissed me like right here, like close to my lips, and said bye. And that was the last time I saw him. With all that information, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I was like super traumatized. And so I started piecing the puzzle pieces together. And since I was 10 years old, I've scratched my genital area. Like self-mutilation. And I never understood why. I would scratch it because I felt dirty. And I would scratch it until it bled, until it was raw. Around 12 or 13 years old in junior high, I started scratching the back of my head. I'd been scratching my skin until it was raw and bleeding on the back of my head. When he told me all of this, I realized why. And it started when I was 10, when he came back into my life. And I finally like connected the dots of my subconscious like screaming, knowing something was wrong. Back to the story about when I would go to Mexico with him by myself at the ages of 18, 19, and 20. He would buy land in Mexico, and then I would go sign it at the lawyer's office, like sign the documents. It would be under my name. I would be the owner. And so the first time that I went, when I was 18, it was nighttime, and I always scratch at night. I was scratching down there, and he thought I was masturbating. And he came over on the bed, and he told me, don't stop. And he licked my fingers. I just wanted to see how you taste. And I told him I was scratching my belly button because I had ingrown hairs. I was like, I wasn't masturbating. Ew, like what the hell? And I'm scratching the bumps on my stomach. So I lied to him. I wasn't gonna say, yeah, I'm scratching the crap out of my private area because I'm anxious and uncomfortable and I'm freaking out over here, like laying in the same room as my dad, where I'm like super uncomfortable in the hotel. He's like watching me like a hawk, and I thought he was asleep. When I was 20 and he told me all of this, I finally realized why I was scratching all the time. It was my anxiety and like my body screaming out. And another interesting thing that I would think about after knowing all of this stuff was how I was always afraid to look at myself in the mirror, to look at myself directly and deeply into my own eyes. I never did that because I was afraid of myself. It was scary. It was like I was a demon or something, and I couldn't look at myself in the eyes. So I feel that I wasn't only traumatized between the ages of 0 and 3 years old, but I was like re-traumatized between the ages of 18 and 20 years old. The reason I'm telling you all of this is because nobody talks about childhood sexual abuse. It's such a prevalent thing. It runs like in almost every single family. And I know so many people that have been abused, and it needs to be talked about. And that's why I thought making a video on this was extremely important. When I was pregnant with my kids, I went to therapy when I had my firstborn. When I would breastfeed her, I would imagine him doing those things to her, and it would freak me out. I would have like silent panic attacks and just start crying while I'm holding my baby, breastfeeding her. And then when I would think about being that age, like a newborn, and him doing that to me, I was like numb. But when I thought of him doing that to my baby, I would totally freak out. And so going back to my mom, I told my mom everything he told me almost right away. And she literally threw up, and her heart just broke. And I felt so bad telling her because she had no idea. She was working hard, taking care of her family, thinking her husband was home, taking care of her baby. And not only did he tell me those horrible things, he also told me that he would bring prostitutes over, have sex with other women in their bed while she's at work. And so I told her all these things. She called him and she cussed him out. And she told me to press charges, but I didn't want to press charges because I never wanted to see him again. I actually told him that I forgive him because I just wanted to let it go. But I realized I forgave him prematurely because after having kids, my heart just broke again. I'm gonna go a little bit off tangent here and kind of relate to my last video talking about overcoming depression and suicidal ideation, so you can understand like what type of kid I was growing up. When I was little, I would always ask questions, and I always had like this sadness or this pain within me and really not understanding why. So when my dad told me all of these things, I was like, oh, okay, that kind of helps me understand why I had all that subconscious pain. So I would be in elementary school and I would be asking my friends, like maybe 8 or 9 years old, saying, what is your prerogative in life? And they would be like, what the heck? And then I would ask like my high school teachers or junior high teachers, like, why did you become a teacher? Why do you do this job? As a young adult working, I would ask my managers at work, like, what makes you happy? Why did you become a manager? Like, what's your passion in life? And every time I asked these questions to people that were not my friends, just like outside of myself, like the adults in my life, I would say I was doing an interview for one of my classes so that like it would be easier to ask them these questions. I always tried to find like a deeper meaning in life since I was little and ask questions that people weren't asking. Right? I never heard anyone asking those questions, so I wanted to know. And growing up, I went to Catholic, Christian, Mormon, and Buddhist church. And so I was always like looking for answers like through religion and spirituality of like why there's so much suffering in the world, why there's so much pain, and trying to understand like why these horrible things happen in life. I heard this analogy, which was like when you grab a rubber band and you pull it back, like the farther you pull it back into darkness and you let it go and it flings farther into the light, the worse things are and the more pain there is. Like once you, I don't know the word in English, having all this trauma and pain growing up, I still had a light spark within me to want to live and to want to understand life better. And it actually helped to know that my dad did these things to me and to my family so that I could understand why I was the way I was. My mom, she always tried to protect us from being abused or from like being mistreated by anybody. She always loved me and my sister and tried to protect us from being in situations where things like that would happen. She wouldn't let us go to slumber parties, which I appreciate as an adult. So going through all of this, I have seen so many different types of healers, and it got me started on my journey of spirituality, which started when I was about 19 years old, even before my dad told me all this stuff, because I wanted to know more than what religion and philosophy had to say. I've had a lot of like magical moments happen in my life that I'll talk about in another video. One of the things that I did to help me heal from this and let it go and forgive my dad for real was to write a letter to him. My letter was about like 11 pages long, front and back. Anybody that has hurt you or that has abused you, just when you need to let go and forgive for your own sake, to relieve that from your field and so you can move on with your life. So you write a letter to your abuser or person who hurt you and write to them about how you feel and what you want to say to them. Then you burn the letter, and as you burn it, you say, I no longer need these thoughts, feelings, vibrations, or frequency. Say, I give these thoughts back to the universe or God, and I ask that they be replaced with God's divine, unconditional love. And so that's like the prayer you say as you're burning it. And that really helped me release this energy from my field. The reason I'm making this video is so that people that have had experiences similar to mine know that they're not alone out there, and that despite all these extreme things that I've been through, I'm doing well. I want to help people by letting them know that they're not alone, that this has happened to more people than we all know. This is extremely common and it needs to be talked about. It's time for us to heal, for all of us that have been through these things. And I'm going to share with you some books that have helped me. This one is called The Courage to Heal, a guide for women survivors of childhood sexual abuse. And I think this is for anybody, not just for women. I'll link all these books down below. And then this one is called The Completion Process, the practice of putting yourself back together again, by Teal Swan. And about healing your inner child. And then these are for kids. I Said No, by Zach and Kimberly King. So a kid-to-kid guide to keeping private parts private. So it can help you talk about saying no for your kids when they feel uncomfortable with being hugged or being touched in certain ways, that they're allowed to say no and to protect their bodies. And this one is called No Means No, by Janine Sanders. I'll link these books down below. And I have one more book that I thought was important to share. This one is called Love, a Story About Who You Truly Are. This is what it looks like. I'll continue making videos telling you about my journey for healing and overcoming trauma and the things that I've done that have helped me. So just know that you're not alone out there, and that you never know what anyone's been through. Like, you may look at someone and think that they're fine, but they're suffering on the inside, and they just put a good face on to look like everything's okay. I hope to pass down this information so that you guys can be situationally aware of your surroundings and the people in your lives. If you guys have any questions or anything you want to say in the comments down below, please ask away. I just want to say, please listen to your intuition and listen to your inner voice, and don't be afraid to reach out for help, because people love you and they care about you and they want you to be okay and they want you to be happy. Thank you for being here, and thanks for listening, and I'll see you guys in the next video.